Hi everyone, and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global Podcast, coming to you from Knowledge 16 in Las Vegas. I'm Kirsty McGowan. I'm here with Ken Gonzalez.
Hi, Kirsty.
Hey, Ken. Charlie Betts.
Kirsty.
And we have the pleasure of chatting with Donnie Berkholz from 451 Research. Hi, Donnie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Donnie, it's great to see you again. As I think we want to tell the audience that you're an analyst with 451 focusing on Agile and DevOps and a variety of other interesting research topics. We've also seen you now at a couple of the ITSM events. Could you talk a little bit about your current activities at 451 and your interests?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the director for our development DevOps and IT Ops team. And so I've got umbrella level coverage for everything spanning the gamut from software development, testing, release engineering, integration, APIs, private cloud, containers, microservices, pretty much across the board. Everything from writing code to seeing it running in production and then fixing it and going back all over again.
Mm-hmm. Right, because so much of the value today is delivered as a service. It's no longer about just writing the code and stamping it on CDs. You know, the end-to-end pipeline results in actual operational services, and that's so that makes sense in terms of your coverage. Now, we've had an ongoing conversation in the industry lately about the relationship between Agile and DevOps and IT service management. You've got this paradigm of small cross-functional teams, 2 pizza teams working on microservices, very collaborative, very cohesive, and yet you still have this broader conversation about, well, how do we achieve alignment between the teams? The team of teams problems, and I think that's to some extent where the IT service management conversation comes in with the processes, but I would say that it's still somewhat an incomplete conversation. What are you thinking about that lately?
Yeah, it has been all the way through, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Agile development, which is now 20 years old plus, you see a lot of confusion about how to scale it, right? It works for the 2 pizza team.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you build a larger product with those teams?
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's really come up with the right answer for that. And we're trying this microservices approach to see if that can be, an iteration on the old service-oriented architecture.
Right.
To see if we can figure out a new approach that's a little bit lighter weight. And I think that's been one of the big challenges,
Right.
is creating a lot of technical barriers in the way instead of keeping the technology out of the way so that the people can focus on getting their job done.
Right. Yeah, certainly the idea of having more cohesive functionality within smaller units, I mean, that's almost core software engineering. That's, when I studied software engineering, we learned about cohesion and coupling, and the idea that the more cohesive and more loosely coupled you could make all these pieces, but then you do it into these conversations about does the architecture just emerge? Does the collaboration just emerge? I mean, you get one of the examples I'll throw out is, let's say that you have a data management team that's going to move some terabytes over the wire, and they decide to schedule this on the same weekend that the WAN team is going to take one of the major links down.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't necessarily the kind of problem that's going to be flushed out just by people collaborating better. You need some larger grain signals that are routed correctly across the organization's nervous system, if you will.
And I think as people move more and more toward that as a service idea you mentioned, and more toward a cloud native approach, you start to think about transitioning the idea from one of we're going to schedule a downtime window to one of there is no such thing as a downtime window.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is always in clusters all the time.
Right.
And you take down some of the machines, but the service quality stays consistent. I think that's the key, is how do you move to that new approach of changing from thinking about servers like pets to servers like cattle.
Exactly.
Sounds like that conversation's come up before.
That conversation has definitely come up before. And I think one that's not sometimes on the podcast, but also in a lot of online discussions, is the mindset that ITIL and ITSM and DevOps are diametrically opposed and never the twain shall meet, or the other side which says, well, no, it's nothing new, that all meshes together. So what do you think that relationship is?
Yeah, it's a hard question, and I think it's one that is going to require a lot of organizations to go a little bit outside the boundaries of what they're comfortable with to solve. And the way I think about it is, if you think about DevOpsifying ITIL, if you will, it's about improving collaboration and pushing down decision-making authority, and lowering the risk through automation rather than through human processes, change approval boards, and all that. And so I actually read a blog post a little while back that proposed that if we're able to heavily automate all of our tests and our deployment processes, then everything is a low-risk approval.
Yes.
And
Right.
therefore, you don't have to go through the change approval board as you used to have
Yeah.
to.
Yep.
And it's an interesting new approach on it, one that lets you kind of circumvent some of the processes
Yes.
to continue getting work done without getting stuck in the old waterfall style approach, which is traditional ITSM, and move toward one that lets you be more agile and lets you focus on customer value rather than on this inside-out approach of we must go through a change approval.
Yeah.
We must have our monthly meeting and then wait for that. I mean, there's a
Right. Lead times, mandated lead times.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Like there's a enterprise that I was talking to a little while back, and they were really excited because they had built their own private cloud. And what did that let them do? It let them go from 60-day provisioning time for a virtual machine to 30.
Oh, wow.
30 days, just to be clear. Not 30 hours or 30 minutes.
well, that's not
And it's
exactly
because,
an order of
it's
magnitude,
because of
is
the
it?
process barriers,
Yeah.
right? Because you have to rethink how all of the processes work.
Yeah.
When every time there's a new innovation, every time there's a new technology, you have to say, how could this change the way we work, not just optimize the way we were already working?
That's kind of the emerging theme today. Starting with Frank Slutman's discussion this morning, he touched on that it's not just a matter of doing the old, you have new things, but you're
Yeah.
still doing the old ways.
Yes.
You need new ways to go
Changing
with
the
the
way.
new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
certainly noticed in a lot of customer sites that I've gone on in the last 12 to 18 months is that the number, even if they still have a CAB, the number of changes that are actually hitting the change board
Right.
has gone from pretty well every change that they did and to now just being the absolute exceptional changes that they think they need that human intervention in. So it's certainly changed a lot, that volume and again, making that time a lot faster to get those changes out there.
Yeah, I think the transition we have to start making is one of moving from the change approval board is for infrastructure changes
Yes.
to it's for process changes.
Yes.
I like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, I like that idea
a
too.
lot.
That makes good sense.
Yeah, but certainly the idea that you trade, Nicole Forsgren, I think who we both know, with the Puppet Labs State of DevOps report, she's, they've been running this report, and she will say quite clearly, the idea that you trade throughput for stability is not supported by the evidence. That there's just no data to support that mandating lead times, for example,
Yes.
gets you any kind of goodness or benefit.
Right.
And yet that's been baked into the mental models. That somehow stability will magically emerge because, we're just cooling down the hotheads, so that they're not just ramming. But in fact, what happens is you delay the feedback cycle, which actually, if anything, harms stability because getting feedback on those changes is what gives you the stability
Exactly.
in the human
Yep.
socio-technical system.
No, I completely agree with her perspective. It's about coupling increased agility with lowered risk at the same time. And I think the important consideration is it's not about lower risk per se, but it's about lowering the impact of the risk.
Right.
If you're writing 1,000 lines of code, there's going to be a certain chance of bugs, regardless of how you're writing it or how you're deploying it.
Right.
The question is, how do you minimize the impact when there is a bug, when there's a security issue, or when there's something that takes down the system? And that's why moving toward these loosely coupled teams is the way forward, and moving toward things like canary releases, right? So you can push out things to internal customers, to beta customers, to opt-in people who say, we want the new stuff, we're willing to take a little bit of risk in exchange for new functionality faster, and then gradually push that out to everybody else.
Right.
And I think that's how we can couple those two things together and get the ability to move fast because you're not depending on external organizations, right? You're segmented, you're siloed, but in a good way, right? In an API-defined way.
Right.
So that you can move quickly, and then you take advantage of the new continuous deployment ideas to be able to push things out gradually to increasing levels of audience so that you can minimize the problems that occur.
No, it's all great insights. And I think at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is, not out of hand just dismissal of larger, signals, cadences and synchronization points, but to always question, why are we doing this? Why do we need this? We may need a larger signal to align people like, okay, there is a big change going here, and yes, we haven't gone completely cloud native, so we are going to move that data, and we do have WAN links with major telco providers. Maybe in 10 years we won't, but right now we do. But, how to not, always be doing that, as you say, really dialing down the number of changes and
Yep.
being very judicious about applying those heavier
Yep.
weight tools.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly gone are the days of the 4-hour change board meetings
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
week or every 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't need them.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Puppet DevOps study.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
one of the practices that emerged from that, which was how do you move toward a high-performing DevOps organization, was changing that change approval board process at a high level to one of peer approval instead.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
And it's
that's
just,
great.
it fits into that philosophy of how do we push down
Right.
the authority, which is very equivalent to what you see in military organizations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Commander's
yes.
intent.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an important
It's a
part
good way
of
of
it.
looking at it.
Yeah, yeah, very good.
So Donnie, given the different types of, you get to see across a lot of different organizations, a lot of different vendors, and a lot of different tool sets, do you have any recommendations on what are the things that I could do tomorrow to start getting my head clear and start moving forward towards being able to embrace that continuous delivery model and actually see bits of it start to being realized?
I think the starting point, if you're coming from a service management mindset, is making sure your tools support the kinds of process changes you want to make. As long as your tools don't rigidly define the process you have to follow and you're able to iterate on that process in its own agile fashion, then you can start making that transition toward becoming a cloud-native company.
Right, excellent.
Yeah, great.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Donnie. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again, and hopefully we'll get a chance to have another catch-up in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.